And thank you again, everyone who's joining us. So today we're going to be talking about building up your IPHO chapter and kind of a slang word I thought is basically what's not in the manual, what isn't written out for you to do or think about. And we'll be hosting it. It's from the Northwest IPHO region. But one thing I'd like to just make sure you guys know, this is just going to be an informal session. If you feel free to unmute, share your ideas as we touch on different subjects, because we'll be recording this and some really good thoughts might come up as we have a free flowing discussion. So I'd really encourage you, if you have any input on any of the subjects that we bring up, please don't hesitate to share that with us. We'd love to hear from you, because we're going to touch on this a little bit more. Everything that we're sharing from you with you is coming from that Northwest region, right? There's 8 chapters in our region, and the things that we deal with, the way our structure is, the way our schools operate are completely different than yours. So there might be a great idea coming from the East Coast that the West Coast doesn't know about, or vice versa. So that's why this is a really cool opportunity to just talk with other people across the nation. So my name is Siavash Narji Talakar. I am the Northwest Regional Officer. Joining me today is going to be Sabrina. She's from Cal North State University. And we have a third presenter, Bahar. However, she just had a dental procedure today and has not recovered her ability to speak. So we'll go ahead and fill in for her. We just want to let you know that she did contribute and help us put this together, as so did our entire region. Basically, the whole region came together and said, from our 8 schools, what are some best practices on these topics? And so what do we want to talk to you guys about today? We really want to address the diversity that's happening in IPHO, because we're nationwide. And we want to talk about 5 key areas that we thought that aren't in the handbook that can be like conversational areas that you should start thinking about, either as a new chapter that's already established within the first 1 or 2 years, or as a developing chapter that's looking to be established. Like, what else can you be doing now to help establish an industry presence on your campus? So we'll go through basically addressing some of the chapter variability and understanding how to get those first development pieces going off. We'll address what we think is the biggest dilemma as an IPHO chapter. We'll talk to you guys about how to approach your school administration and your school faculty, how to get them involved, and what's the value of having them involved. We'll talk about basically networking with pharmaceutical industry and what are some ideas we have on how you can get started. And then also how to take advantage of being at events and conferences from an IPHO perspective. So just to kind of start off, we want to address the chapter variability, because IPHO chapters, there's schools that have 25 students in their pharmacy program, and there's chapters that have like 200, 300, 400 students. So the IPHO chapter can vary from size of 5 to 10 to 20 to 50 or 100, depending on how interested some students are. So it's really hard to always have a national gauge that says this is the expected standard from all chapters, because how can you be expected to raise money to the same level of a huge chapter when your chapter has 10 members and your school is only 30 students, right? These are things that we want to talk about. And to address that, you have that chapter performance, that yearly report, that metrics that you get from IPHO National to help you address, okay, what are some of my problem areas? And that does seem kind of straightforward, but if your problem area is professional engagement, how do you fix that? Well, sure, you can engage more professionally, but we want to think about how can you sustain this chapter. One theme that we're going to address throughout this is thinking about change management, understanding that this IPHO chapter is going to be around for years to come. And in 2, 3, 4 years from now, you as the president are going to be gone, and like only your spirit will be around, right? So you have to think about, what can I do now? Those networks or relationships that I make now, how can I make sure that they flow through time as we move on with leadership? We want you guys to start thinking about what it is your focus is for your chapter. Small chapter starting out, like what can be your focus? Can your focus be on setting up advanced rotations for your college? Maybe not, but maybe your focus can be bringing in those speakers or connecting your faculty experiential with other opportunities. But it's important that you decide what it is that we want to do. The biggest fail that we've seen is people trying to do too much and setting their expectations just way too high. A lot of chapters say that I want to get speakers in, I want to fundraise, I want to do that. And let's be real, you can't do it all and be a good pharmacy student and do like 10 things that are way too much. So just defining what your focus is for your chapter, and then being innovative. There's a lot of problems that are presented to us, and the only way to solve these problems is through innovation, thinking how can you think outside the box? How can I fix this fundraising problem with what I got? How can I connect with pharmaceutical industry when I'm in the middle of Nebraska and the closest pharmacy is like 30 miles from me, for example, right? Like, how do you deal with that? We want you to start thinking about it, and hopefully give you some options to address those issues. So one of the biggest questions we ask is, how can IPHO reduce the variation between the chapters? That's the question we ask, and we want to address through this. And then also, how can IPHO improve involvement across, not just across within chapters, but within chapters in your region, and now within our nationwide as well. Because one thing that Jim mentioned with COVID and this virtual age coming around, there's actually been a huge opportunity for you to work with chapters within your region, collaborative webinars, working together on a lot of different subjects. We'll get into that, but how can you improve that? These are questions that you should be asking yourself that aren't in the manual, right? So we wanted to talk about chapter development first. You know what? I wasn't changing my slides. I'm sorry. So to answer the question of how can we solve these, like we said, we want to focus on innovation and being able to replicate things that are successful. The sincerest form of flattery is replication, right? If I tell you an idea and you're like, that's a great idea, take it and run with it. Don't change anything or change something. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel when other people within our IPHO basic collaborative are already doing things successful. So if a school is doing something successful, then you should think of ways to be able to share that and advertise that strategy within your region to start with, and sharing it with your regional officers so that they can share it with other regions. And we kind of has to take that mentality of thinking outside of yourself and thinking on the greater whole is basically the first way to address a lot of the issues that we're going to face moving forward. Some of the examples that we thought of, doing like workshops, doing inter-region discussions. We have, Northwest has a regional group me chat where we just shoot any ideas, random ideas, talk to one another, making sure you're joining different LinkedIn groups, social media groups that are pharmacy related, or creating your own. And then again, advertising your successes. This isn't advertising like trying to sell something, but if something works at your school, make sure that your region at least knows about it. It's because you could really help one struggling school big time. Like for me, if I know when I started my chapter, if I just had someone throw a few ideas just to get my brain going, it would have been huge. So if you're an established chapter, or if you're not, just reach out to other people and see what is working. When it comes to the social media, we wanted to share with you some LinkedIn groups that can really help you start connecting with other like-minded individuals. And one thing with LinkedIn, I'm huge on LinkedIn, and I believe it's very big with pharmaceutical industry. They looked at your LinkedIn. So step one, make sure your LinkedIn is updated and accurate and it looks good. There's lots of guides that can help you with that. But then once you're on LinkedIn, what do? Well, you got to start networking. So there's 4 groups that we've identified, probably good for you to join. The professionals in the pharmaceutical biotech industry is basically a community that has like various discussions about industry news, network opportunities, any kind of recommended articles, inspiring stories. They talk about their core mission of being someone that helps develop future leaders in pharmacy and in sharing best practices, increasing biotech knowledge. So for you, these are great posts to take and share on your Facebook page as a social media. These are great ideas for you to start researching and saying, hey, this is a new technology coming out. I'd love to dedicate some of our chapter resources to this. It's a great networking to be able to do that through this association. Another one we have is the American Association of Pharma Scientists. And this is a North American scientists collaborative group. And again, they share a lot of cool, interesting pharmaceutical related articles within this group. So we'd highly recommend you just kind of follow them on LinkedIn as well. And it'll help, again, grow that professional network for you. We have the pharma connections worldwide, and this is more of a global focus. So you can kind of start seeing what's going on in the pharmaceutical industry on a global scale. Again, you got to put yourself in that environment to start being able to absorb the info. And this is a great way to do it. You just kind of sit there, go through the feed, and you start seeing what's happening in biotech and industry, and start planning for the future. Start thinking 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead. What's going to be the newest technology? Well, you got to be within the field learning about it if you want to be able to be on top of it. And then another one we recommend is Fierce Pharma. And they talk about a lot of FDA regulatory, drug safety, generic comparisons, things of that nature. So some really good LinkedIn groups to kind of get your feet wet and then to start establishing and knowing what's going on within the pharmaceutical industry. Serena's going to talk about what we think is the biggest dilemma.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Sabrina. I'm from California State University out in Elk Grove, if anyone's familiar with the area. So the biggest dilemma that I think across most of the president of IPHOs that I speak to, the biggest dilemma is always going to be around funding. And the reason for that is because in order to hold events, some things that we do for all of our speakers is providing gifts. If you're providing food at some of your meetings, that's an incentive to get people to come out and join. And all of this stuff costs money. So that's one of the biggest things is, where is the money? Show me the money, right? And so one of the biggest things you can do is look at your school funding. If your school provides any funding for organizations, brainstorming. So right now we just created a fundraiser. We found a local boba tea shop. We asked them if they'd be willing to fundraise and let us have a fundraiser there and give us some of the proceeds. And luckily they're okay with it. We got it approved by the school. So that's something huge that you can do as well, is finding the local places that people eat. And that's around within the proximity of your school, because that's probably going to be the most convenient thing for students to go to. And asking if you can host a fundraiser there. And then the reason that we talk about funding is financial stability. So a lot of orgs, especially like at our campus, they need to have some sustainable component. So how are you consistently also bringing in money? So fundraising is a huge part that in large is going to bring in a lot of your revenue. If your school already provides it, then it's great. However, when it comes to events and stuff, it really comes down to the funding. And that's because you do want to invite students in, you want to have events, you need to have food at these events. You also want to thank your preceptor. So having gifts, these little things always add up. And so the biggest thing that I feel like I personally struggle with, and the presidents that I've spoken to in the past, is fundraising money. And that's just going to be something that you probably have a constant battle with. However, if you can figure out and secure sources, whether it's through grants or it's, having a fundraiser annually that brings in revenue, whatever it might be, this is just that area that might be somewhere where you have to really put work into.
So I'm curious if you guys have any good funding events that have worked well for you, besides your typical bake sale, right? Do you have any thoughts or anything that's kind of been successful that's maybe not IPHO related, but in a different club that's worked for you? Please let us know.
Personally, for my professional fraternity, I'm in PDC, we did a fundraiser through a restaurant, as previously mentioned, and I think that's one of the most successful ones that we've gotten. A lot of other student orgs at our university tried to do ones with merch or with all kinds of mugs or something, but there's always a problem of you have to sell so many before you actually make any money. So for me, I think that the best way to do it is to pair with a local business and do some sort of food-based thing, because everybody loves food. Obviously that's a little bit difficult with COVID right now, but I think that there's still ways to get around it with mobile ordering and stuff like that.
There's also, if anybody's done it, so with our organizations on our campus, so that there's no issues with other organizations, we all claim fundraisers and then we update it constantly so nobody does the same thing. But I know a lot of orgs do candygrams, where you can send a personalized one, and then students, they have deals 3 for $5 or whatever it might be. That's another thing that you can also think about, and if other organizations do it, but it's big at our school. So people do, Halloween candygrams, spring candygrams, and they're individual, candy goodie bags, and then you can write a personalized message to one of your friends or whoever it might be. So that's another opportunity.
Yeah, fundraising has always been for me the most difficult, just because I guess I'm really shy when it comes to that stuff, and you need someone in charge of this that's not like me. That like I would not be a good fundraiser. I get hesitant, like, hey, so you got to have someone that's good with people and getting out there for sure.
We've seen some chapters do pretty well with swag. I think, not today, but I'd say within a few months. We have a store now. We kind of built a space on our website. There'll be some more interesting things there. And one of the things we want to try to do for the chapters is set up arrangements with vendors, service providers for, whatever, sweatshirts and t-shirts, this kind of mugs, that kind of thing, what you mentioned. But we could set up a basic agreement with them, and then the one-time setup costs would be done, and then you could just go in there, order whatever you want, and then you would get distributed directly from the vendor. So stay tuned. I can't promise that within a week or a month, but it's something that's coming.
Something else I wanted to share that was done a few years ago at our region, and again, this was something that's in the past. I hope you guys can see this. But basically, they created IPHO lapel pins, right? You got your APHA and all your other ones. Like, I'm more proud of IPHO than any of that. And they basically charge $5 a pin. And of course, people outside of your chapter won't be buying this that aren't a part of IPHO. But still, just another creative idea and something that's actually cool and I would cherish if I had one of these. So just another idea that things that are possible that you guys could do. Move on to the next slide.
Yeah, awesome. So one of the biggest things that I think would help to attain success with your organization is faculty involvement. You never know who someone knows. So you can always, when it comes time to getting one of the biggest events that I think across all organizations, East Coast, West Coast, one of the main events that everybody holds is having a guest speaker come, right? Because that's what's really going to engage students, is having an actual industry professional come and speak about, what's their job like, what do they do, what skill sets does a student need to be successful in this? And that's a great way to learn and advertise your org. And so sometimes that another issue that can arise is, well, how do I get people to come out here? How do I get people to speak? It's easier now, I think, because now we see the need for like a virtual space, but how do we get people to actually come to the campus and speak? So one of the main things you can do is obviously ask your faculty members. If there is somebody that has industry experience, that's amazing. You should definitely have them come speak, and they're probably willing to help out students too and speak about what they know about. Faculty can also create research opportunities. And that's great. So you can have your actual people in your organization come to apply to them, or however you want to set it up on your campus. And then the main thing is going to be getting the word out to students. Faculty have contacts that you may not know about. They may have worked in a research lab and they met somebody, and now they know somebody that works for, a big pharma company. You never know who someone knows. So the more that you network within your university and your faculty, especially, you don't know who their colleagues were, who they graduated with, they're more than willing probably to help you and connect you with the people that they know, to help bring out speakers. So really get in touch with your faculty that are on campus. Even if you don't speak to them, getting a message out to all your faculty and staff is amazing. Because like I said, no one's going to help you if they don't know that you need help. So as long as you reach out, there's going to be someone that connects you down the road. Yeah. So another transition into school administration and staff is really owning your campus. So when you start creating your organization, blast it everywhere. Let your friends know in other orgs that, hey, we're having this initiative, we're bringing it about. This is the campus that on our campus, we're going to provide this organization. The more you get the word out and the more it's on people's mind, the more willingness there are to, think about it and be like, okay, what is going on here? What is this new organization? And I think that's one of the best ways is to just advertise it. Tell everybody that from faculty, staff. They can, I know when in our organization, what we do is we usually tell our advisors, which are usually faculty, and they actually have access to the entire email listserv. So class of 22, 23, 24, all of them. So we basically send out mass emails constantly, posting on Facebook pages. However your school goes about advertising, own all those pages. Really be out there getting the word out there. Obviously, administration, we've already talked about this, is building that support network. Having faculty on your campus that can help support the organization is going to be huge. The referrals, like I talked about, when you don't, like I said, you don't know who someone else knows. But as long as you're out there getting the word out there, more than likely someone's going to connect you to somebody that can help you if they can't necessarily. Educate, we talked about that innovation piece before. It's really important that students understand what IPHO is. I can say for my org, one of the biggest ways that we get our name out there is on club day. I'm curious to know, do all organizations or campuses have a club day where you can learn about different orgs?
I know ours has one.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's like a West Coast thing.
I think that Keaton could speak more to it because I'm just a P1, so we didn't have things quite as typically as we do in
Okay.
previous years, but
Yeah, in previous years, we have a week-long engagement week before the P1 start classes, and we have all the organizations come in and set up booths and whatnot and present.
Perfect. Okay. That and that's really amazing. And I believe if you were to have any sort of advertising or any logos, things, t-shirts, that's a great way to also put it out there and do a little side fundraising. Also is to have some cool swag, right? Having people come, have an attractive poster board, be really engaged. The people that are out there, having your extroverted people, really rely on them to pull people in and bring them to your booth and be like, hey, do you know what this is? Have you thought about this? And especially it's just a great way for students to understand that, hey, if I don't want to go maybe the traditional retail or perhaps hospital route, there is other ways I can use my pharmacy degree. And that's the way that we mostly advertise it. And that's how we get students to come and be like, you know, what's your skill set? What do you want out of this? Have you thought about this? And really that advertising is huge. And I say club day because that's, I think, the best way of when students are walking around and seeing different orgs, that's the best way to get it out there. And that's, again, back to owning your campus and making sure people know, hey, this is what IPHO is, this is what they offer. Also, I would say having a general meeting where you just have a PowerPoint presentation where you go over what is industry, what students can gain from it, what professionals do, and that kind of sets the stage for whatever you have lined up for the rest of the year. Students kind of know about what events you'll hold and what industry is. That's the main thing, is you really want students to come out understanding what industry is. And then the main, and that second piece is, if they want to pursue industry, that's great. And they'll probably continue with the organization, but if they don't, it helps kind of narrow down their choices as well. And that's my main thing that I would say as just a president is I always tell students, I'm like, hey, you don't know if you like it until you try it, right?
Sabrina.
Yeah.
I wanted to add one thing that I found very valuable when it comes to administration and education is certainly your students have to know what IPHO is, but I found that making sure that the faculty, and we'll talk about that, but administration and staff know what the heck IPHO is too.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Like what I found really beneficial, we have a lady named Barb. She's our front secretary for the dean's office. So anyone that comes and goes into basically that faculty administration has to go through her. And I've made her my best friend. We talk about everything, what my life is up to, my research, but also IPHO. And I kind of brag to her, hey, we're having this speaker come, let people know we're doing this. We have this event going on. And, she's almost like the gossip queen of our faculty. And eventually everyone knows. So finding those people and making sure that it's not just students that need to know, but now basically Barb and other administration, they reach out to our IPHO chapter and say, hey, I have a friend who works at this company and he'd like to come present at our school. Can you guys set something up? Or, hey, we're having this drug dinner. Can you reach out to these people and do this and hook us up or invite these medical people? So there's just so much value making sure those other people within your school are a friendly face and kind of support you as well.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And then the next component, and there's also research opportunities too that we spoke about before. Setting up an API industry rotation, that's a huge thing, especially for, if you have some students that realize this is my passion, this is what I'm doing, they're probably going to stick it out, through P1 year, P2 year as they progress, depending how long your program is. And then that next component is having API sites available for them so that they can actually get that real experience within industry. It's not the easiest. I know we had spoke about this before this presentation about, some schools don't have the contacts. I'll be honest, my schools, we're barely kind of getting there. However, luckily for us, there is the FDA, the CDC, and there's also Bristol Myers Squibb, which all students that go to pharmacy school can apply to these rotations. And that you can advertise those as well, so that students know that, hey, if we don't necessarily have a contract already set up, that there are still these, different opportunities available that they can apply to. And it's really about getting the word out there, making sure that students know what opportunities lie ahead of them. And then really the main component though is going to be working with your experiential office. So those coordinators that work with securing your sites and getting students scheduled, those are going to be your best friends. Those are people that should be your BFFs, not your enemies, because they're going to be the ones that if let's say if you did network with an industry professional and you were able to work with a company and they were like, yeah, I'd love to precept for you. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as I found a preceptor, now I'm going to go do this rotation. There's a lot of paperwork. At least I can say from my experience working with our experiential office is there's a lot of paperwork that goes into it. So it's not as easy as I found a preceptor, I'm going here. With my school, they actually have hard deadlines of if you're going to start a new site, you need to let us know, they need to fill out this paperwork, we need to go see the site. So it's a process. And the earlier you start that process, the better. But like I said, make sure you advertise the sources that are out there that students can apply to freely, because those ones you don't have to work so in sync with the experiential office. The experiential office is if you're going to be working with new sites. And if you can open up a site, that's amazing. Your school should thank you big time. However, if you do start that process, make sure that you work with them closely so that you can get it approved and have students at that site and keep it ongoing. And that could be like your legacy that you leave for your IPHO chapter. Who knows?
You would be a legend.
Yeah, literally. But working with your school admin faculty, get your face known, do the networking, because the more support you have, the better it's going to be for your organization. And knowing that, faculty and staff can count on you is going to be huge. It's going to be really help with the success of your organization. Okay, so I feel like this is like the meat of your organization is your school events. Because if you're not having events, students aren't going to come. And that's really what they get out of these organizations, for all organizations, is what events are you having that's attracting people to come. And the events that you have, how often you have them, that's really going to set you up for success. So the more planning you do, especially, I know for like my school, we have summers off because we're a 4-year program. I know some schools are 3 years. If you have some off time though, that's the best time that I would start reaching out to people, start scheduling things. Because like I had mentioned, if you have a general meeting where you talk about what industry is, that's a great way to advertise. We have these events coming up, by the way. And that kind of gets people's, senses tingling and they're like, okay, I know what's to come. So if you have, a timeline that says like, I'm at this time, I'm gonna have someone from regulatory affairs. In March, I'll have someone from marketing, things like that. That's really great. And that's just because then students are like, okay, now I kind of know what this org is, what events they'll have. And then, often enough, students will come to you after your presentation and be like, hey, I heard you're going to have this speaker come. When is it? And they'll ask you more questions. And it's great. And if you don't have to have hard dates and deadlines scheduled, but as long as you have like a roundabout of like, I'm having this speaker come in March, the date's not finalized, but hey, this is when they're coming. That's great. And that's just to show the audience that, we have things scheduled, we're going to do things. That's great. So campus engagement is huge. We have our Northwest, I believe, is that what we call it? Northwest chat for IPHO.
Yeah.
And it's really great. So all of the people on board are all in one GroupMe chat. I think this is something new that we started. I don't think it's been around, right?
No, we started, and actually, I feel like we set a trend nationwide because other people are like, why aren't we doing that? That's like such a low-hanging fruit. Why not, right?
Yeah, and I think that's amazing. So what's really nice about our region chat is that anytime we have events, especially since now everything is all online, is sending like a quick link that says, hey, on this date at this time, here's a Zoom link. This is a speaker we have, please come through, let your region know, let your campus know. And it's great because I'll be honest, and I know some of the presidents have spoke about this too, is another dilemma per se, not as big as fundraising, is involvement. Sometimes students don't come out, and that it just kind of is what it is, but it's nice to spread the word out because that way other students from other campuses that are interested, it gives them an opportunity to see an event at a different campus. And it also just allows them also to have the opportunity to network and learn more things. And it also helps make your numbers look nice. Not saying that small intimate settings aren't bad, but it's nice to have more people come. It makes the speaker feel like, hey, there's a lot of people here that want to be here, and that it's amazing. And having that campus engagement is just it's really great because you're able to talk about different ideas that you have. I learn new things all the time, so it's great. Your outreach, building your presence on social media, something that we started this year, although it hasn't taken off, it's not huge, but we did start our campus Instagram for IPHO. And in there, we talked about all the different board members we have, the different positions we have, the events, we talk about our flyers, and that's how we do our advertising. I don't know if maybe it's just like a my school thing. So I'd be happy to hear what other people are doing, but on our campus, we actually have a Facebook page of all the different classes, and we make sure that everybody on board has, especially like our social media and marketing director, that personnel is added on all those pages. So when we have events, we are posting that flyer 3 times at least, on top of our faculty advisors sending mass emails out, on top of posting it on our Instagram. We get the word out as much as we can. And that's huge to make sure that students know. So you basically reach everybody.
So I'm sharing here because we talked about the Club Rush. This is kind of the table that I had set up, or our club had set up with the Club Rush. I got some pens from National. Everyone loves pens with a logo. Even though you don't really need a pen, I'm going to take it because it's free.
Exactly.
National provides you these kind of little pamphlets that talk about what IPHO offers, what industry pharmacy is. And I had this little book here. And what I had done is on IPHO website, they offer you basically job descriptions for any kind of pharmaceutical industry job. And we have these kind of jobs listed here. So we offer 12 different industry jobs that are available to PharmD students. Because as a Club Rush, these are first year kids, right? All they know is I'm going to work at Walgreens or I'm going to work in the ER. Like that's right. You don't know that there's so much more to pharmacy than that clinical or retail setting. So this maybe just to give you guys ideas, cheap poster board, just kind of was creative, put together our pictures. We talked about what is in the IPHO, what do we do, who is our officers, and it was a great Club Rush. We got a lot of membership, and it was an effective way of getting people there. So hopefully this kind of gives you some idea of what you could do with your events when they're happening too. And then, sorry, go back one. Thanks. The other campus org. So something that's huge is collaborating with other organizations. When we were coming up with this document, a lot of other chapters at IPHO had mentioned that they collaborate with AMCP. And that's something my chapter does as well. And so we actually try to hold a roundtable each year. We used to have it at a really nice winery, but when we switched deans, the dean wasn't too thrilled about having it at a winery. But it was great because it was such a nice, intimate event, but they really want us to use the campus event center. Not as nice as the winery, but it's okay. Unfortunately, obviously due to COVID, it's been canceled. So we've been moving it to an online platform. But when things do open up, this is one of our biggest events that actually a lot of students that don't come to the events ever, this is one event that they like to come out to. And it's really nice collaborating with another org on campus because it allows you to bring your set of speakers, their set of speakers, and make it a big event. That more collaboration helps to bring more students in as well. And our event, if we have 10 to 15 or 20 students that come to our normal events, our roundtable is a big one. And that's where students get to meet people, meet the professionals in a more intimate setting that can go up to at least 50 to 100 students. And it's amazing. So that's really key also is, whether you collaborate with APHA, AMCP is kind of the one that I saw a lot of
organizations talk about is that's who they collaborate with. So I'm not saying that it has to be AMCP, but if there's like an internship panel, whatever it might be, really open it up and start speaking to other organizations on your campus and trying to co-collaborate and bring events together. And that's awesome too, is having that collaboration.
Sabrina, I wanted to add, we collaborated with APHA and NCODA, which is National Community Oncology Dispensing Organization, and they're basically about oral cancer therapy club. We collaborated to do our philanthropic event, which was raising money for the breast cancer walks and doing other kind of walkathon events. But IPHO is so small, we don't have the membership. But when you work with a club like APHA, you know, they bring, most of your students are part of that club anyway. So bringing those people together, it was our idea. We stole the APHA name and slapped it on our marketing, and boom, huge event, right?
Yeah.
So those are ways that you can kind of hit those philanthropic and fundraising ways as well, at least if you kind of partner with another person.
Yeah, and you never know what events you can come up with, whether it's, you know, a round table, maybe it's a fellowship talk with a residency / something. You could honestly take this anywhere you want to go. But talking to the presidents of different organizations is really key, and facilitating that outreach and being able to create events, that's huge. So it doesn't have to just be IPHO. You can totally hit a bunch of other students. And that's also another ways, you know, another student could have wanted to go a different route, and now you co-collaborated and they were in another org, and now they're like, whoa, industry is my passion, it's my life. And now you just converted a whole other student. So you never know what can happen. So it's really cool to be able to collaborate with other organizations. So part 2. So what type of events can you hold? Honestly, anything that students can gain a sense of what industry is, that's crucial. So whatever it could be, and we're open to suggestions. I'd be curious to know if anybody's done anything in the past or has any ideas, because I love to create new events. But sometimes it's hard to find that space of like, what new event could I do that's different? So the main route that we've talked about is guest speakers, having people come and talk about themselves. People love to talk about themselves, by the way. So having someone come talk about what their day-to-day activities is like, how they got to where they are today. And you could do this through LinkedIn. Like I said, reaching out to your faculty members. So that's kind of that university involvement, asking, you know, sending a mass email maybe to your faculty, being like, hey, I'm starting this chapter. Does anybody know of anybody with industry experience, whether, you know, if it's you guys or your colleagues, whoever it might be. You could also talk about internships. I think the IPHO national website does a great job. And we actually, on my campus, one of our positions that we have is a director of national engagement. That's one of our board positions. So they're looking at the national resources and connecting our students to those national resources. So if you have a board member that does that has that position, that's amazing. And if they're able to connect students, if you don't have internships already, this is a great way to advertise those. Obviously, then you have to get the word out. So announcements, social media engagement, that's going to be your mainstay of advertising your events. And then in terms of events, you could have roundtables, guest speakers. We had a fellow come and speak about how to tackle mid-year. Other campuses have talked about, you know, CV workshops, talking about cover letters, interviewing, creating elevator pitches. It could be anything that you honestly want, as long as students are learning something and learning skills that could help them set them up for success if they do pursue industry.
One event, do a LinkedIn LinkedIn showcase. Get people in your school to create a LinkedIn profile, right? One of our chapters actually charged non-members $10 and members $5 to come to a LinkedIn webinar shop that they were holding. I know those some people are like, yeah, I'll donate $5 or $10 just, you know, to support. But it was a good fundraising event for them as well.
Oh, and then I think really quickly before I forget, I should have talked about this in the biggest dilemma, but I don't think I mentioned in terms of if you pay dues for clubs, that's another way also to increase your funding pool, is charging membership fee. And then, you know, another way if you want students to join national is kind of offsetting the cost. So we don't actually charge our members double. And what I mean by that is if a student pays for the national membership fee, we don't make them pay our local fee. However, if they want to join just the organization and not do the national membership, then they have to pay the local fee. I think some orgs charge as little as 5. My campus does 10, and then by a certain deadline, we increase it to 15. And then going back to the events thing, also is like if we did a roundtable, we charge students that aren't members, and that can help bring up revenue a little bit.
So real quick, before we move on, because I just want to make sure that if there's anyone on, if you guys have any questions of picking our brain, if so far the past few minutes that we've talked, has it triggered any questions that you'd like to ask, or ways that you think that we could help you as a national, because you have some good members on here. Anything that's piqued your interest, please feel free to ask away, because I don't want to take away any kind of time for questions before we finish up. Okay, so then please feel free to interrupt me. But I'll go ahead and finish up. One last huge area that we thought is important, even if you're a new chapter or a developing chapter that's not initiated yet, is getting that pharmaceutical industry network going out. For me, I'm going to talk about this more on the next slide, but going to conferences and events is the place for you to connect. You gotta basically go to these conferences prepared and being intentional, knowing, hey, I'm going to go to this conference, and the best time for you is the vendor showcase. When they give you 2 hours to go and talk to the vendors with like the drug companies, because usually most conferences have a period of time for that. Go early, right? Leave whatever accredited hours you're going to get 20 minutes early and just sneak into the vendor showcase and just start talking to these people. They love students. They love talking about themselves, their drug states. And that's your key. That's how you're going to make those industry connections. Like a few years ago, that's kind of how I learned. I started becoming friends with the MSLs. Like I have a few MSLs that we're on first name basis now, just because we met at a conference. I let them know, hey, I'm the president of the IPhO club at WSU. I'd really love to have you in our network, just have you as someone that we can talk to. You connect with them on LinkedIn, make sure you have a business card, exchange that info, let them know, hey, I'm going to follow up with you. You send them a thank you email after the conference saying it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for the samples. Thank you for the dispensing scalpel you gave me, or whatever free thing they gave you, the deodorant. And then just say, hey, we're going to be hosting a webinar, for example, on bloodborne diseases. I know Takeda, for example, offers a lot of drugs on hemophilia or other kind of von Willebrand disease. Would you be interested in presenting at our school? And through these kind of connections, we've brought drug companies to our school and helped them connect with our faculty and administration. And through about 2 or 3 years of constantly doing that, that's how we establish our chapter's footprint. And I think that's a great way for the rest of you guys when you're at these conferences to take advantage of it. Take advantage of being there. Be prepared. And don't be afraid. Don't be shy. This is like, again, your golden opportunity to make a friend in the business. And this person will come back around. You have to nurture a little bit. You can't ask for them right away anything. But they would appreciate coming to your school and giving you a webinar to talk about either being an MSL, to talk about their drug, to talk about their disease state, to talk about their company, you name it, whatever you ask of them. Usually they love doing it. And most of the time they've taken us out, brought lunch to our school. We've had catered, like, I feel like 5-star lunches to our school. People get so jealous because I got these connections. We've had them take us out to 5-star dinners. I'm not trying to get your hopes up so high, but they have the budgets for this and they love doing it. And in these connections, for example, with one company, we reached out to providers and said, hey, we're having a drug talk. Would you support our local student chapter? And we got 6 or 7 providers from a local hospital. And the drug MSL has been trying to contact them for 4 years. But because you're a student asking on their behalf, they love to come. And boom, boom. Now you're getting your faculty, you're getting your name, you're getting industry experience. The drug company is able to contact providers to try and like push their drug in essence, or their drug state. And then these providers are coming in, getting their free meal. Everyone wins, right? So it's all about not being shy and just putting yourself out there.
Really quickly, before I forget, and another great opportunity for fundraising. Unfortunately, my org can't do it because someone else already claimed it. But having a business card fundraiser, that would be really key. You could hit all orgs because students that want to go to mid-year and that go to conferences, it doesn't have to be IPHO related. That's a really great way to bring in revenue, is having a fundraising about business cards.
For sure.
Sorry, my senses
No,
were
it's
tingling.
okay. I know we're running out of time. I really wanted to like go in depth on how to connect with the pharmaceutical industry, but for most of you on here right now, you're fairly new clubs and you'll get there. But basically, we wanted to leave you with more questions than answers, because these are questions that you should be asking yourself about your chapter, about what it is that you want your chapter to represent initially, right? In 4, 5, 10 years, your chapter will represent everything that is pharmaceutical industry. But right now, what are you trying to do? You're going to be the chapter that brings in a speaker once a month that talks about disease states that you're currently learning in your therapy class. Then that's your scope, right? That's what you're defining. But just have a plan for what you want to do this year, and then also have a plan for what you want to do the year after. Make sure your vice president or the president-elect is CC'd on every single email, because that is the chain of command. Like the next year when you're gone, you want that vice president to have the same connection that you did. Like I would say that's super important. Thinking about broadly how you want your chapter to impact the student body. Do you want to focus on establishing APBEs, doing philanthropy, bringing in again those speakers? What is it that you want to do for the population? Because any business, what you're selling is whatever the people want. So you got to figure out what it is that people want. And then the biggest hurdle, in addition to finances, is how do we get national membership sign-up for those first and second year students, right? Establishing a value for them. I don't have an answer for you, but things that you have to think about, because you need to hit those metrics on your yearly report. You have to bring in some national members, and just thinking about what's the value for these students, and maybe thinking out loud and then sharing what you find to be most valuable with the rest of your region, so that they can basically get more of those chapters as well.
Yeah, and then before I forget, another way that you could also, like we talked about, giving the people what they want, is sending out, a Google form, having your faculty that, again, that you should be connecting with, having them send a mass email and having a Google form that says, hey, students, what do you want to see? I had asked some of just people on my board, I was like, what did you see last year what did you not see last year that you want to see this year? And somebody said, we don't ever hit regulatory affairs. We need somebody from that department to come and speak because nobody's coming out here. And I actually was able to connect, being an IPHO national member. That's obviously going to help with your success too. Connect with somebody on LinkedIn, brought them in, and it was great. We had a great event. But asking people, like, what do the students want to see that may not be on board? Because some people aren't, they might be on the shyer side and they may not voice their opinion, but using a Google form is great and getting those responses.
Absolutely. So that concludes whatever we wanted to talk about. Do you guys have thoughts or questions, anything to share with other people on the call? Please go ahead.
Yeah.
I have a question, and maybe people with more experienced programs can answer this for us. We're looking to get this started up. We're currently going through the process of getting authorized by university, everything like that. We're in the process of doing the university one. That should be no issue. The biggest issue that I see, me and Sydney have noticed from talking to people that have done these things or have sat on similar things, is we have a pharmacy student, we call it like a government body, you could call it. They have to decide if we can start organizations, stuff like that. And we've noticed that there is considerable pushback on new organizations starting. So I was wondering if anybody has a similar situation. We call it SLE, student leadership, or something like that. I was wondering if anybody on the call had experience dealing with those persuasive ideas, recommendations to overcome any hurdles that they might potentially throw at us.
I'd like to take that one because over the last 8 years, I've seen that a lot. The first thing I'd like to say is, that type of argument assumes that you have the right formulary of student organizations now. And if we aren't meeting an unmet need, then there may not be a need for an IPHO chapter. I think we are. You've seen the momentum around the country. I think the supply and the demand and the job market for traditional roles in pharmacy is speaking, and you can't just sign up for a regular job anymore. So more people than ever are exploring non-traditional roles. I mean, if you go on, my LinkedIn blows up with this stuff. So, I would say, do we have the right mix of organizations at our school now? Is one of them basket weaving? I mean, I don't know. And then sometimes there's some organizations posing as, oh, we've got industry covered. I like them all, AMCP, DIA, there's a number, sometimes APHA just says we're the umbrella and everything falls under that. But the fact is, this is a minority of pharmacists, 3% maybe go into industry, but it's growing because people are looking for other opportunities because they aren't there. We had a lot of pushback from faculty over the years. When I graduated and I announced, I was the second ever Rutgers fellow, right? And now there's hundreds every year. But, I announced, hey, I got this thing. And they looked at me like, oh, wow, okay. Like, we had high hopes for you. You were one of our student leaders. I'm like, no, I want to do this. So I think now we've seen a much different attitude from faculty and administration. They're welcoming because every win is a win. They got to look applicants in the eye who are applying to the school. They got to look parents in the eye and say, we're the place for your daughter or son, to come study. And so outcomes are so important. And we're helping those outcomes. So there's a very unmet need, but it's not for everybody. That's for sure. I hope it's for the University of Iowa, but I don't know. But the notion that there's too many organizations, there's two parts to that. One is, are we serving the right audiences right now? Are we meeting unmet needs of our students? And the other is, this is more for the smaller schools. I don't know what the enrollment is at Iowa right now, but some of them just say, there's not enough, there just aren't enough student leaders to go around. We can't really support this number of organizations. And that's a different question. If it's a class size, I think earlier, Sivash or someone was referring to, if you got 30, 40 students per class, yeah, I mean, you can only service so many of these. But at a bigger school, and I gather University of Iowa might be one that, I'm going to guess 150. I don't know how many per class. You've got a pipeline there, and I've seen the last few years your alumni, your graduates going into these kinds of programs more than I have previously. And those kinds of data points are important too. So I hope I kind of answered your question through a variety of different angles.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Jim.
I think also you could leverage your personal experience. If you feel as a student that your needs aren't being met and you don't having access to industry, use that passion. I mean, if you know that this is where you want to go, I would assume that, the people that take on board positions in IPHO are extremely passionate about it, and speak to that. And that you want to be able to provide that opportunity to students. That's my number one thing when I request funding is I'm like, look, I have the passion. I want other students to know that there's these opportunities and I want to create those opportunities, because guess what? My school isn't doing it. And that's not saying that it's their job to do that, right? I always say when I speak to students, I was like, your didactic curriculum is not going to cover industry. So your best bet is to sign up and join my club. Because you don't know what students, and I say this to everybody, you don't know what you don't like until you try it. So you may come and tell me, you know what, I want to be an inpatient clinical pharmacist, and this is what I'm specializing in. And next thing you know, I brought a guest speaker, they spoke to that guest speaker, and now they're like, no, it's industry is for me. But being able to provide that opportunity and being able to express that to your faculty in a non-aggressive way, obviously, and being able to say that, hey, look, this is the need, this is how I'm going to provide it. And also what helps your argument is if you have things lined up, being like, look, I'm bringing so-and-so from industry to speak. I'm starting this thing. If you have tangible objectives and you show support for that and being like, this is what I'm going to do with my org, please let me, do a pilot run if that's what's necessary. If IPHO is there while you're there as a student, that's great. Unfortunately, if it dies down, that's okay. But at least you had that opportunity and you gave it to students. And being able to really just sell that argument really well, hopefully helps reduce some of the pushback. That's just personal advice. Hopefully that helps. And then also maybe perhaps, I know for my university, it's not too difficult to start an org. The main thing is that you need students, at least 20 signatures, that students that want to be members. So maybe that could also help, is having like a petition that says, hey, my students sign up if you want an IPHO campus on, on our campus, an organization like that. That could also help back your argument too, is that, these are actual students that pay tuition that need this. That could help.
Yeah, I agree with that, Sabrina. I put my video on, but yeah, we've had schools that it was a no-brainer, but they were just push back, push back, push back. And then, they actually did a petition and people signed. There's a little bit of a chicken and egg there. And I put in the chat earlier, if you want me or if you can generate interest through another speaker, we're happy to do that, so that you have, wow, that sounds exciting to me. And, I might want to pursue that. So how can we get a club here that helps me with my interests as a student? And then just kind of going back to what I said before, but one of the things that's pretty influential, I don't know if you just trot them out in front of the student government, but if you have alumni in industry, and you do, University of Iowa, that's powerful. Like, the administration is not going to say no to a potential donor, a successful alum, somebody who might sit on their board, somebody who might provide access to research dollars or opportunity for the school. Those are very, very powerful connections, and you've got those. And if you need any help, I could work on it in 15 minutes and help you connect with University of Iowa alumni who are successful in industry and could help you with that.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. We'll keep that in mind. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Sabrina. Some great tips there. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I can leave my email too, or
Yeah.
if you need help, or I can give you my contacts of who I've had come speak. Anything to help, because I know as a student it's hard, and especially like if your campus, like ours, isn't located near a drug company. You're driving a couple hours out, or you're going, to the East Coast, so it's hard. And especially with the pushback, I know it's even harder. So I'd be willing to help in any capacity that I can, because I love to see passionate students speak about things that they want to bring to their campus. So if I can help in any way, inspire or help, please do reach out.
I saw someone else unmute their video. If they want to, please go ahead.
I want to hear from Jonathan Holan. He's got the crazy lab glasses, the goggles. What are your needs?
There he
We
is.
called him out. He's like, oh,
Technical difficulties. I'm just here to learn, honestly. I've been enjoying listening to you all talk about organization and everything.
Okay.
I think it's been very informative.
Wonderful. Yeah, one thought that I had real quick, Keaton, to answer if other people are having this dilemma of establishing, I found IPHO to be something that I could sell as an interprofessional club. And on our campus, and I know this can't apply to everyone, we have nursing, PhD, MD, exercise, we have like physical therapy, we have speech and hearing. So when we make events, we market it to the entire university, not just campus. We say, hey, drugs aren't, I know this is stereotypical, and our teachers didn't like it because we made pharmacists stereotypical. But we said, like, drugs aren't just dispensed by pharmacists, they're prescribed by a physician, administered by a nurse, created by a PhD, right? So when you have an IPHO event, everyone should be there. And we made it interprofessional, and we actually got funding and support because the entire university says, hey, we have this club that's bringing students together. And it's a huge goal of the university to have interprofessional events. So when you can, if that helps in your Iowa, then I think that's a good other angle in addition to everything else to kind of give you a more wholesome approach from all aspects.
That's an incredible idea. Thank you. I'll definitely keep that in mind.
All right, I think we've taken a little more of your time. I think I sincerely appreciate everyone just hanging out and listening. If there's any last minutes, Moz, do you have anything to finish up with, or any other questions from anyone?
Not any more questions for me. I just want to say that was a very informative speech. Thank you, Sabrina and Siavash,
Of course.
and Bahar, of course, all the guys that were involved. I think this was a very well put together slide deck. I think you guys put so much work into this. I hope everyone that was on here, benefited. So yeah, so I'm so glad that we ended on such an important topic. And thank you, Jim, for staying